Hello, friends, divine ones. It is Fiona here of Divine Business Circle with today's edition of the DBC News, Divine Business Circle News. And I hope you're doing well wherever you are. I am enjoying a really beautiful, sunny afternoon here in the Scottish borders. I'm in my hometown of Walkerburn, right by the River Tweed, and really enjoying the sun just shining on my face. Today is Tuesday, the 3rd of March 2026. This is the full moon in Virgo day. So at the time of recording, we've just had the totality of the blood moon lunar eclipse, and that happened at 11:34, and as I'm recording it's 1:34 right now, so that was exactly 2 hours ago. So I think it's just come back. So for the places around the earth where the full moon is visible, in the past couple of hours you will have seen it steadily growing darker to totality, gradually getting redder and sort of a reddy brown color, a bit like a bloodstone, if you've ever seen one of those, or a carnelian. It's a sort of reddy, orangey brown color. And so the blood moon happens when the Earth, Sun, and Moon are aligned in such a way that the shadow casts this reddish orange glow, and that only happens when it's at a total lunar eclipse. So we do have different types of eclipse. Annular is when the distance between the Earth and Moon are such that you can still see a bit of light around the Moon. So this is the last total eclipse that we will see worldwide for the next 3 years. So feels quite special. And we have a full moon in Virgo, and it's eclipsed in Virgo. The other interesting thing about this particular Virgo full moon, eclipsed Virgo full moon, is that there's also a Mercury retrograde happening right now. Mercury retrograde in Pisces. So Virgo and Pisces are at opposite ends of the spectrum on the zodiac wheel. So currently we are in Pisces season when the sun is in Pisces. We currently also have Mars in Pisces, we have Venus in Pisces, and we have Mercury in Pisces. So Sun, Venus, Mars, Mercury, all the inner planets are currently having a big party in Pisces, with Mercury going backwards just to be a bit quirky and interesting, stirring the pot up. And so if you're familiar with the themes of the different signs, Pisces is the final sign of the zodiac. It is, if you think of Aries as the beginning when we're born and come into the world, Pisces is right at the end of the life's journey, which the zodiac zodiac cycle represents. So you could see that almost as that in between death. Sort of, I sometimes think of it as the conception stage, in fact, like the sort of beginning and ending period of life, the in between phase. And Pisces is a water sign, so I often think of that as the gestational period, and also when the end of life period. So it's that kind of in between stage. You've got the symbols of the two fish pulling, but they're tethered by the tail, one swimming in the direction of life and the other swimming back into the spirit world. So there is this real contradiction with the Pisces water sign. So there's a lot of, I'm going to say heavy emphasis on Pisces. I have my own personal sun in Pisces, so I am very at home in this energy, and I do love this time of year. It feels like a really celebratory boost for me, with my birthday coming up in a couple of weeks, or 10 days or so. And so when we have the full moon opposite the sun, or when we have the moon opposite the sun, that is when we have a full moon. So it's always going to be in the opposite sign to where the sun is when we have our full moon. And so currently we have our full moon in Virgo. And the interesting thing about Virgo right now is that its ruling planet is Mercury. Every sign has its own ruling planet. Mercury is the ruling planet of Virgo, also of Gemini. But right now it's weighted towards the Virgo energy. So Mercury is the messenger. It's very movable, it's mutable, it is the divine messenger that travels to the depths of the underworlds, of the lower realms, and traverses up to the heavenly realms and everywhere in between. So it's the traveler, it's the merchant, it's the message bringer. And I have my sun sign in Pisces, being born in March 14th, but my rising sign is Virgo. So to me, this feels like a very potent energy for me personally. But of course, it will affect all of us in unique and individual ways. And I do sometimes find energy readings can feel very general because we are all so unique and different, but I only give it to you from my personal take. So I felt drawn to wearing very earthy colors today to honor Virgo energy. So Virgo is one of the 3 earth elements, which also include Capricorn and Taurus. So Virgo is the mutable flag bearer, shall we say, of the earth element. And earthy colors, as you can imagine, are browns, greens, earthy nature colors. And I thought I would come and enjoy the sunshine for myself, but also bring you out with me today because it's such a lovely day. And I almost went up the hill. I'll show you our hills in the background there. I quite enjoy going up those hills. But I felt that in honor of Pisces and Virgo, that I would stay closer to the ground. So I'm here by the river at the lowest point to honor earth and water, which is the elements that are particularly potent today and this month in general. And so here I am by the river. This is give you a little behind the scenes tour. I am sitting on this little tarpaulin and my jacket to keep my bum warm. And I have brought some oracle cards with me today. So what I thought, in the spirit of the divine messenger, that we would pull some oracle cards. And so today I have brought a very earthy pack. This is from the Druid Oracle, the Druid Plant Oracle, I should say. Oh, hello, I've got a visitor with me. Hi. And I also have with me the Divine Planning Abundant Profits. So I thought I'd go for a sort of more Virgo grounded energy pack and a more spiritual, creative, but also practical business planning, but spiritual business planning pack. So I thought I would draw a card from each. And so if you are with me live, and also whoever's on the replay, if you'd like to join me in just grounding yourself just for a quick minute while I pull a couple of cards and just see what comes up to share a message with us today. Right. So just get yourself comfortable wherever you are and start to take a few breaths into your belly. And while I do that, I'm shuffling the Druid Plant Oracle deck. And I'm going to invite anyone who's joining me just to tune in with spirit, with your own spirit guides as well, into your heart, into the earth. And even down deeper into the earth, just drawing on the energy of water in honor of Pisces energy. And as I do that, I'll pick up the other pack and give that a nice shuffle too. Drawing on the imaginative, creative power and visionary energy of water. and feeling that energy of water and earth just traveling up through every cell in your body, from the earth upwards, up into every part of your body, through your legs, your torso, your arms, hands, into your neck and back, up into your head, up into your crown, and feeling the warmth of the sun and the stars shining on you from above. And gradually come to in your own time, and I will just pull a couple of cards and see what we have. Okay. So here we have, so this one's a bit of a surprise to me, actually. I'll come to that one in a minute, but first of all, I'd like to show you what came up from the Druid Plant Oracle, and that one is Betony. So Betony is a beautiful herbal remedy, which is particularly good for the nervous system. And in Virgo, when we have Virgo energy circulating, and if we think about Virgo energy, so Mercury is very much the energy of Virgo, and Mercury being in Pisces right now is sending us more subtle messages that we pick up when we're daydreaming, when we're gazing out the window, when we're looking in the reflections in the mirror, in the water, the subtle feelings that we have. So it's messages that aren't necessarily words and language, which is more Virgo, more direct, more earthy, more practical. Pisces energy is mysterious, it's magical, it's different. And Betony it's a lovely kind of combination of the two. It's one that can be really helpful in supporting people with sleep, particularly if you're troubled by nightmares, things like that. Is often a very grounding herb to get you out of your head and kind of more into your body, sort of embody. And I think that sometimes can be the push and pull when we are more spiritually inclined, more soulful types of people. There can be a dissociation from the body oftentimes, a more connection with spirit, and ignoring our body's needs. And plants are really beautiful messengers from the earth that help to combine these two. They're so full of their own little characters. So you can see here, there's a very long, thin stem. And at the top, there's this kind of burst of purple, very crown chakra kind of energy. For those of you who work with chakras, you'll maybe be able to drop your own reflections on what's coming up for you there. But there's a sort of top heavy energy to this plant, as you can see. And my sense on this card coming up is that, especially with all this rise of technology, we're moving soon. Astrologically, we're going through a shift of Uranus that's been in Taurus for several years now, but it's about to shift into Gemini. So moving from an earth sign to an air sign. And air signs typically relate to the intellect, to our head, and to things like technology and that sort of communication. Which can put us a little bit at odds with our own internal guidance. It's a sort of different type of communication, our intuitive communication, as opposed to the external input of the messages that we get in our notifications, in our emails, even letters, physical letters, although more and more these days, much to my lament, that we have less and less snail mail, which I absolutely love. But even that, it's taking us out of our own mind and giving us external feedback, which can disconnect us with our connection with our own inner guidance and the subtle messages that we miss when we're too tuned in to external world. So this is a little messenger just to make us a bit more aware of where we may be too much stuck in our heads, and nudge us to tune into what grounds us, what helps us feel down to earth, what helps us to have our feet on the ground, and also just to notice where do we have a tendency to sort of draw upwards and disconnect from the body. Pisces oftentimes is related to things like fantasy realms, and on the shadow side of that can even spill over into things like addiction and compulsion, and a desire to be stuck in our comfort zones and things like that. So there is a sort of escapist quality to Pisces oftentimes, and I'm not able to screen share because I'm outside on my phone, but the chart of today's planetary arrangement is very heavily weighted to the dreamy Piscean realms, very impractical, very yeah, and we need that, right? We do need a bit of a break sometimes from just doing everything for money, for example, or just always focusing on business. It's healthy to have a counterbalance, but right now there's a very strong balance on. I mean, if you think about the winter season, the very end of the winter season, it's very much about dream time. We're starting to get those first awakenings, those first signs, those first early spring flowers are coming out, bringing us little signs of hope, and we're starting to dream about what does our springtime look like, what will our summer look like, and but it's not necessarily the time to start doing, but it's definitely a good time to start dreaming. But with a lot of dreaming, it can get stuck in our heads, and the actual doing part of it or embodying part of it can sometimes feel a bit disconnected, depending on maybe what your personal constitution. If you're very earthy, very grounded, you may be more weighted to just getting things done, and less maybe rely on others for the dreamy creative side of things, and vice versa. For those of us who are more creative minds, having the people who have the practical follow through element is really necessary, important. So we need each other. And yeah, Betony is a plant that sort of draws it all together. So really nice remedy for teas or tinctures if your nervous system is feeling quite wired, if you feel like you need some grounding. So you might want to work with it either to find a picture of it and draw it, grow it if you're a gardener, or just work with it energetically. Just even go to bed and bring Betony to mind as you go to sleep, and see what message comes up in the morning. There's lots of different ways you can work with plants energetically. If you have a herbalist near you, you could always buy a bit of tea or a tincture and work with it in that way. I am a medical herbalist. Also, I've been practicing for 17 years, and I'm actually currently reopening up my practice. So do reach out if there's any questions or queries that you have. If you're interested in working with Betony, I would be happy to help guide you in a way that works for you as an individual. We're all different. We all work with plants and energy in different ways. So the second deck that I pulled from is called Divine Planning, Abundant Profits. I'm not sure if this is mirrored for you or not, but there you go. And so, yeah, Virgo and Pisces are considered yin planets. They're feminine in energy. And the card that I pulled is Divine Masculine. So that's an upward facing triangle. In elemental symbology, the upward triangles represent the more masculine element, so that's fire and air. And when it's a downward facing triangle, that represents earth and water. So Virgo and Pisces elements, earth and water, are represented by a downwards facing triangle, one just as a plain triangle and the other one with a line through it. I think it's the earth one has has a line through it, and water is just up downwards facing. However, the card that I pulled during this very watery, earthy influence time happens to be the divine masculine. So I think that's an interesting counterbalance to this heavily feminine weighted period. I'll read out the questions first of all, and then I'll share my own personal reflection. So this is part of a deck that was created by one of my business mentors. Her name is Joanna Hunter. She happens to be a Virgo too. So when I was looking through my decks to see which decks I would bring with me on today's walk, knowing that that Joanna represents Virgo energy very much to me, I felt very drawn to bringing this. And of course, with the divine business circle. So of course, divine planning is important. So she's got some questions for journaling, for reflection. So I will read them out and put them below this video where I'm posting this also. So the questions are: what attention can you give to the structure of your business? Now, earth element, although it's considered a feminine element, actually does give structure to things. So if you think of, I'm right here by the river. So the river banks give the river structure, give it the container in which to flow. And so even within the feminine elements, we do have a form of structure. But in this card, the question draws us to: what attention can you give to the structure of your business? So if we were talking about how Pisces is very much about the imagination, about dreaming up possibilities, and when we build castles and kingdoms in our dream realms, when we wake up the next day, they all dissolve into the ether. And so in our earthly human waking reality, we also need to ground our dreams into a clear structure. And whether you're new to business, whether you are your business isn't so much about earning money, but about your creative business, your message to share in the world, whatever that may be, at a certain point, it's important to ground your dreams and visions into actual structures. So certainly with the Pisces and Virgo dichotomy, there's very much a kind of, you can think of it almost as a battle. It can be a battle when you're pulling so far one way or one way pulling the other. But ideally, you want to get to a point of integration where you sort of creep towards the middle path, the middle way. And so, yeah, rather than constantly thinking of new plans and ideas, and I definitely do a lot of dreaming. I can very easily come up with grand plans and grand ideas. But yeah, our time is precious too. And I think following through and completing projects is something really important, certainly when Mercury is in retrograde, which it is now. It's not necessarily time to forge ahead. And if you need that time to actually really have the dream time and to have the planning time with no expectation, we get 3 Mercury retrogrades a year, and they're about 3 weeks each, and more or less. And during that time, there's often lots of stops and starts, or things can take some twists and turns. So it is actually an excellent time for not necessarily starting new projects or launching projects, but to refine and tweak existing projects. Decide, we've got an eclipse today, or we've just had an eclipse. So it may be reviewing projects and ideas that you've had and deciding to let them go once and for all, just so they're not cluttering up mental space. I think sometimes we don't realize how much energy that the things that we initiate actually do take. So when this question comes up about what attention can you give to the structure of your business, that could be your soul business. It doesn't necessarily have to be a paid business. It could be, your creative passions and projects in the world, how you like to shine, your interest, and how you inspire others in the areas in life that you're passionate about. Could be also the business that you are making a living from. So how can you bring more structure to it, and what weeds maybe need to be cleared so that you can have a nice smoothly flowing energetic flow to the business. So what comes to mind is when you've got a river and there's been like a raging storm, and the stones or debris and wood just sort of start to obstruct the flow and gets a bit wild. There can come a time when we need to sort of clear the river. We need to remove the logs that have fallen over. And great to have a creative brainstorm at times, but we also do need to do the sorting and organizing. So that's very Virgo. The next question is, what needs more planning in your life and business? So pretty straightforward. And where do you need more support in business? So this is under the divine masculine. I'm kind of reading it also very much as the earth element, which actually isn't a masculine, but yeah, not to ignore the masculine. I think there's a lot of talk about divine feminine rising and women's voices needing to be honored and respected, and I think that's very important, of course. But with that, it's balancing that with the divine masculine, and so with all the kind of wildness and creativity that the feminine archetype brings, sometimes the more linear and the more straightforward aspect of life, which we all embody in one way or the other, or it can be as obvious as a member of the opposite sex, or the same sex if you happen to be a male. That embodiment of the masculine principle, which can be just a bit drier, a bit, I think, I don't want to use the word boring, but that's the word that comes up, like, to me, because I'm a very creative mind. Sometimes the masculine way can feel a bit rigid and dry. But that's why we complement us. So I feel like the divine masculine needed to come in to this reading for a little bit of that point of yang in the yin. So there's a lot of yin going on, but let's not forget that within that we need to honor and respect the divine masculine, and vice versa. When the summer months come on, it was bright and hot and more masculine in energy. Interesting, I've got the bright sun shining on me, which the heat and airiness, which this is in abundance today, is considered the masculine elements. Yin and yang are obviously more politically correct, but there you go. So those are the two cards that came up. Thank you so much for joining me if you are here with me live, and thank you for those of you on the replay if you watched right until the end. I would love to hear how you will be working with the energies over this period of time. Mercury in retrograde in Pisces, the Virgo eclipse energy that's come up with today's full moon. The next 2 weeks from today's Tuesday the 3rd of March, so 2 weeks from today, we are in the waning period. So the waning moon period, when the moon goes from full back into the dark moon, the black moon, and that's an excellent time, just really supporting this Mercury retrograde period of not just organizing but also letting go. And eclipse energy is also very much about releasing and letting go. And with the eclipse, if you can imagine the full moon, brightness of the full moon getting obscured by the light of the sun being obscured by the earth, so that you have the shadow on the moon. The symbolism of that, of a darkening, and then the light returning after the obscuring, is heavily symbolic of revelations and things that have been hidden coming to light. So over today and the next few weeks, just be mindful, just be aware of any insights, any breakthroughs, any realizations that may come, particularly with the Virgo types of themes. So in terms of organizing, structuring, refining, things to do with your habits, rituals, also health and body, all of your foundations, really. It's an earth element. So how can we nurture our foundations, weed out? It's a great time of year of preparing the soil, starting to order your seeds and things like that if you're a gardener, and just get yourself organized for the year ahead. And with Eclipse, Mercury Retrograde, and Pisces season, it's a great time to do that. So I'd love to hear how you're working with it, and thanks for tuning in today. Bye for now.